Robert Fulghum. Some of y'all know the name, some of you don't. He is an absurd combination of minister and bartender. What a minister. He's also famous for writing a book called All I Ever Needed to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. The book is an exposition of those simple rules that make life worth living, like leave the sandbox the way that you found it, share what you have with your neighbor, and always hold hands when crossing the street. Pretty simple, pretty profound. And it's good advice. The days of our lives can be long enough that sooner or later someone's going to have a bad day. You know what I'm talking about, because we all run into it from time to time. You're worn out, worn down, you're overworked, overextended, stick a fork in us, we're done. The frenetic pace of our lives and our schedules make us burn out. It's not just a possibility, it's more like a probability. We want to have it all, see it all, taste it all, do it all, feel it all, and we want to look good while we're doing it. And we push and push it, and no wonder at some point when we least expect it, we break. Even if you're doing good things, good work, the work that you deeply believe in that's going to make the world a better place, it's easy to go to the well one time too many, and when you pull it up, you've got nothing but a clanging dipper in an empty bucket. I love those metaphors. And this is why we need this story in our gospel today that Denny read from John. It's an interesting story, and John is the only one who tells it. In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, after Jesus is baptized, he goes off into the desert to do that hard work of prayer and reflection. But here in John, he follows his baptism by partying. And not just any party, but a Jewish wedding party. Now, I mean, no disrespect to fraternities and other sorts that want to have a kegger on Saturday night. They can't hold a candle to a Jewish wedding party. I mean, these things go on for a week. And the host provides all of the wine and the food and the drink. And I mean, I'm sure there were some coolers and koozies and comestibles brought along, but Jesus and his disciples showed up at the party when the wine runs out. And it's led some commenters to say that maybe it ran out because Jesus and the disciples came to the wedding party because they were throwing them down. I don't know. But for some of us, it sounds strange that he would do that, as strange as a minister being a bartender, I guess. But Jesus was at the party, and it does seem that he was not shy about having a good time. Now, John does not say the wine ran out. He says when the wine ran out. And that implies that nothing lasts forever, not wine, not a party, and certainly not more wine. It was no surprise to John that the wine ran out, and it shouldn't be to us, but because what is really interesting is nothing to do with the wine. It's everything to do with the interaction between Jesus and his mother. John says that Jesus' mother goes to him, and if Jesus and the boys had been enjoying the wine, I can just imagine her cutting her eyes at him with that withering glance that only mothers can give, like, wine's running. I can't do it like that. And that's mother's code for, I have a sneaking suspicion that you and the boys had something to do with it. But regardless of why the wine had run out, whether Jesus and his friends had contributed or not, Mary knew that her son could do something about it. And if he wanted to, which it sounds like at first he didn't really want to, because he said, "Oh woman, what have you to do with me? It's my hour's not yet come." And then the most curious thing happens. It appears she gave Jesus one more look, and then turns on her heels and instructs the servants, do what he tells you to do, which I think is her way of saying, young man, you may be the Messiah, but you're still my son. So she turns and she leaves. And then the most curious of miracles, he turns water into wine. It is so much different than any other miracle that he ever does. So I told you that so I could tell you this. And the archdeacon spoke of it this morning. Vanity is, all things are vanity. Well, Solomon. King Solomon was quite possibly the most shocking of God's chosen leaders ever in the Bible. He's the son of King David and the godfather of Judaism. The Hebrew scriptures describe him as the richest and wisest man to have ever ruled. And he demonstrated astounding wisdom. He wrote beautiful songs and was loved by God. However, in spite of that divine favor, Solomon spent his whole life searching for meaning apart from God. He lived life in full pursuit of wealth, fame, and pleasure. His journey led him to accumulate great wealth, build magnificent mansions and gardens and vineyards, and pursue sexual pleasure with 1,000 of his closest friends. He became rich beyond powerful beyond measure. Yet all attempts at gratification end in vain. They're empty, and soon he says it's meaningless, a chasing after the wind. He feels alone and abandoned. He denies himself nothing, yet he continues to live in emptiness and despair. And like Solomon, we fill up on things and find ourselves running on empty. And when we live this way, it doesn't take long for us to realize the wine has run out. Pascal said the only thing that consoles us from our miseries is diversion. And yet it's the greatest of our miseries, because diversion passes our time and brings us imperceptibly to death. And this is what human beings typically do when the wine runs out. We direct ourselves away from reflection, study, soul searching, and prayer. We use pleasure as a way to escape the pain of a broken life. And it becomes a vicious circle, like trying to quench your thirst by drinking salt water. And, of course, the $64 question is not, will the wine run out? Because the wine always runs out. But when? If we live long enough, we will all come to a moment like the Apostle Paul, where we feel utterly incapable of doing what we should. In those moments, we learn that fatigue makes cowards of us all. Now, the wine has run out, and I'm not preaching at you when I say this, but I'm speaking confessionally. I've run out of wine. We worry and we weary of doing good. We hit the wall and experience compassion fatigue. The wine has run out. Or we come to the moments in our marriage where living with each other is more work than play, and we experience marital fatigue. And that wine has run out. Our work leaves us feeling empty, bored, or defeated, rather than engaged and alive, and we experience vocational burnout. And that wine has run out. Again, the question is not, will the wine run out, but what will we do when it does? It was this question about what to do when the wine runs out that Mary and Jesus were having this small scene over that day at the wedding party. And when she whipped around and instructed the servants, do what he tells you. Whether she knew it or not, the mother of Jesus gave us the answer to our questions. When the wine runs out, what do? Well, it's simple. It's so simple, it's beautiful. Do what Jesus tells you to do. And what is that, you might ask? Well, he tells us to pray. He tells us to love, to serve. He tells us to take care of each other, to forgive each other, to nurture and sustain each other, and to be kind and considerate to one another, to stand with those whom the world excludes. We seek to change the hearts and minds of those whose approach to Christianity could be called condemnation of Christianity. We don't do it by the force of our argument, but by loving them, even when they hate us. Again, there's another way of saying, leave the sandbox the way you found it, share what you have with others, and hold hands when crossing the street. What does this mean for us today? Well, it means that you don't have to leave the party when the wine runs out. You see, it's not the worst thing in the world to run out of wine, especially if it leads us to turn to Christ and to each other a little more, opening to each other a little more, causing us to be a bit more humble, a bit more honest, a bit more interconnected. Then that is not a bad thing. Like me, you may at first feel embarrassed when you can't go another step yourself, but the gratitude that washes over you when someone steps up and walks a mile with you outdistances that embarrassment. If the wine runs out, we need help. For if Jesus could take up a towel, wrap it around his waist, and wash our feet, then the least one of us could do is to give each other that wine of support, understanding, and love in those awful moments in our lives when the wine runs out. The first thing we learned in kindergarten is to share what we have with others, and it's the first lesson we forget as adults. Someone once said, all sin is rooted in the suspicion that God is not very good. And if that's right, then this story in John is not just a story about how Jesus saved a party, it's a resurrection story, reminding us that when our wine runs out and we're on our last leg, Jesus is the one who keeps issuing invitations to party where the wine that is served is always the best wine, and where For it is the sweet communion wine of forgiveness and grace. And when we drink this wine, like all good wine, it causes us to lose our inhibition and our fears, and we lean back in the confidence assurance that Jesus would never let the wine run out. Listen, Anglicans, if Jesus could transform common water into wedding wine, spit and dirt into new sight, a troubled sea into a pathway, well water into living water, could Christ transform the waters of our lives into a shower of blessing? Could it be? Well, yes. And for that, this Sunday after the Epiphany, this third Sunday after the Epiphany, we're very thankful. Amen.
Amen.
Remember the words of our Lord Jesus Christ, and he said, it's more blessed to give than to receive.